And so this week guys, we've got some really interesting questions that were directed at Kubo himself, and of course we'll be diving into his answers, especially since they touch on topics that most fans are dying to know more about. For example, one of the most intriguing questions was, who exactly founded the art of Kido, that unique Shinigami technique that blends power, intellect, and spiritual discipline, one of the most complex and versatile combat arts in society? Was it the brainchild of a single genius who built its foundation from scratch, or was it a collaborative effort born from the wisdom of the earliest Shinigami? And most intriguingly guys, was this mysterious founder part of the Zero Squad? Or someone else? But that's not all guys, we'll also talk about another question. What exactly is the Jurishi? That mysterious zone where enormous amounts of spiritual power gather, forming one of the most spiritually charged areas in the human world. Is the presence of Shinigami and Quincy there merely a coincidence, or is it that this energy has always been what drew them in from the start? All of these questions and more we'll explore in depth throughout this video. So this fan assumed that the Shinigami who invented Kido was originally a member of the Zero Division, and even went as far as to ask whether that person was still alive or had already died. But Kubo's reply was very clear. The inventor of Kido was not from the Zero Division, and the detail about his identity remain a secret for now. Honestly, before even reading this answer, I was almost certain Kubo would drop his classic line, "That's a secret," since that's usually his go-to whenever he doesn't want to reveal major detail yet. And to be fair guys, I wouldn't mind it if he keeps that secret for a future reveal. I don't know. Anime? Hell arc? Who knows? But what truly caught my attention here wasn't the answer itself, it was the way the fan framed this question. I'm not entirely sure whether this fan deliberately made up a hypothetical scenario just to provoke Kubo's curiosity and get him to respond, or if he genuinely believed that someone from the Zero Squad was behind the creation of Kido. But what I have noticed guys, and I think you will agree with me, is that when it comes to Kubo, some questions need to be clever and slightly twisted if we want to extract useful information from him, even indirectly, because if you ask him something too straightforward like who invented Kido, you will probably get one of the two outcomes. He'll either ignore it entirely or respond with his trademark, "That's a secret." So when this fan asks a question that doesn't actually exist in the story, was the inventor of Kido part of the Zero Squad division? Kubo immediately responded by denying this possibility, and just like that, even though he didn't reveal the person's identity, we still learned something new and definitive. The individual who created Kido was not a member of the Zero Squad, which means he belonged to another place, or perhaps even another era entirely. And that alone guys opens the door to a whole world of new theories. That is why guys, let me share with you some of my own thoughts about Kido and its possible origins. So guys, those who have been following me for a while know that I have talked about Kido several times before and shared various videos about its nature and beginnings. And one of the things I firmly believe is that Kido is not a modern invention. It's a very ancient technique, one that predates the establishment of the society current system, and I mean here Gojo 13. In other words, I don't believe it was a recent discovery or something developed by any of the known captains. Even the theory is suggesting that one of the old captains created it, or that Chisa, the former head of the Kido Corps, was its original founder, for example. It doesn't really make sense. And the reason is simple. Kido doesn't require any external or physical medium to function, unlike the Zanpakuto, because as we know, wielding a Zanpakuto requires something fundamental called the Asauchi, the spiritual vessel in which a Zanpakuto takes form. A Shinigami can't simply create a Zanpakuto from nothing. They need something, which is the Asauchi. And according to the novels, back in the era of Ikomokudomoi, when Yamamoto was still a young man, the Asauchi system hadn't been fully developed yet, meaning the concept of Zanpakuto wasn't even complete at that time. So based on the fact that Yamamoto was still a young man at that time, and 2000 years ago he was like in his 50s, I can assume that the days the Asauchi was formed was like 6,000 or 5,000 years ago. But Kido, it's completely different in its nature and origin. Its essence lies in manipulating one's own spiritual energy, channeling it through the body and hands to produce offensive or defensive spells without any physical catalyst whatsoever. A perfect example of this is Ruki. Back when she still lived in Rekongai as a child, even before learning any formal Kido spells, she was already capable of gathering her spiritual energy into a small orb of light. That alone shows that the foundation of Kido lies in these incantations, these verbal manifestations of spiritual energy. So the real question, in my opinion, isn't who invented Kido, it's who wrote those incantations and designed their entire system. Who decided to divide them into Bakudo and Hado? Who composed the advanced spells like Hado Kurotsugi or even the secret Hado that Ichibi used against Yuawa? Because guys, when you dive deeper into Kido, you will notice something interesting. Some spells seem to rely only on the user's spiritual power, while others appear to draw power from the sky or from external spiritual sources. And that contrast alone hints that the art of Kido might be far older and far mysterious than anyone in the Soul Society truly realizes. That is why guys, in my view, Kido isn't just a set of spells, it's an art of incantations capable of drawing out power not only from the user's own spiritual energy, but also from their surroundings. Take for example, Hado 99, the one involving those dragons-like manifestations. It clearly relies on some sort of spiritual line connection, and it was called Lee line in the novels. And even more mysterious than that, some spells seem to summon elements or entities from somewhere else entirely. Things like stakes, seals, or similarly physical objects. That's exactly why I once suggested that this entire art might have originated from hell itself. After all, its literal name translates to the art of demon, and maybe, just maybe, one of the known noble families, those who have connection to hell, was actually responsible for developing it in the first place. That's guys for the question of the Kido. Now let's move on to Kubo's next answer, which focused on the topic of the Jirushi. To be honest guys, most of what Kubo mentioned on this subject in his answer already exists in the manga, but he framed it in a way that really reinforced certain ideas, especially the link between spiritual energy and the locations where it tends to accumulate. The fans' question suggested that there might be a connection between how Shinigami and Quincy live in Karakura town and the fact that it's classified as a Jirushi, a place with an exceptionally high spiritual concentration. The fan imagined that when many people with strong Ryatsu gather in the same area, over time that place gradually transforms into a Jirushi. But Kubo flipped the theory completely on its head, saying that the opposite is actually true. It's not that strong spiritual beings create the Jirushi, it's that those beings are drawn to the Jirushi, which already forms naturally beforehand. However guys, these Jirushi aren't fixed or permanent, they are temporary phenomena. They appear in different parts of the human world for a limited period before moving on to new locations, exactly as Yamamoto once explained in the manga. And this clarification from Kubo guys aligns perfectly with what we've already seen in the story. In one of the most important chapters ever, the ones where the term Ryu was mentioned clearly from the first time by Yamamoto, and we also discovered something like Royal Family, Royal Guard, and Soul Palace, and also the Uken. That chapter wasn't just a random bit of lore, it was like a cornerstone of the series. So in the same context, Yamamoto explained that Aizen sought to create his own Uken, but to do so, he would need to sacrifice 100,000 souls in a location rich with spiritual energy. But here lies the key point guys, that Kubo emphasized once more. Those 100,000 souls weren't what made the place spiritually rich, it was already a Jirushi at that moment, a temporary hub of immense spiritual concentration. If the process depended only on the number of souls, Aizen could have simply chosen any other city and wiped it out. But the truth is, Karakura specifically was the area where the Jirushi phenomena had manifested, at that time, which made it the perfect gateway to the royal palace. That is why guys, Karakura became the central stage for all major events at that time. So in the end guys, I want to hear from you. What do you think of Kubo's explanation? Do you believe the Jurichi is simply a rare natural occurrence, or is it the result of some hidden balance between the human world and the soul society? And finally, what do you think might have been the true creator of Kido? Share with me guys your thoughts, and see you guys in my next video.